Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are diving into a truly groundbreaking paper by independent researcher John Cantelou. It's an incredibly ambitious framework, one that actually attempts to unify the very fabric of existence, going from dead matter all the way up to that subjective feeling of being alive. It's a massive leap in how we view reality, so we're going to systematically walk through Cantelou's core arguments step by step to see how the whole shebang connects.
Let's kick things off with the ultimate mystery. Just ask yourself right now, what does a massive, swirling galaxy, a tiny living cell, and your own conscious mind have in common? At first glance, absolutely nothing, right? They exist on entirely different scales of reality and are seemingly governed by completely different sets of laws. But what if there's a single underlying pattern that actually drives the formation and survival of all three?
Well, according to Cantelou, the answer is constraint organization. Think of it kind of like a whirlpool in a river. The individual water droplets create a structure, and that structure ends up stabilizing the whirlpool as a whole. The individual parts of a system create rules, or constraints, that stabilize the overall system with one ultimate goal in mind: persistence. The universe, it turns out, has this fundamental tendency to build structures that just simply want to keep existing.
So, that brings us to our first major hurdle. Section 1, the grand explanatory gap.
Traditional science usually puts physics, biology, and the mind into entirely separate boxes. A physicist studies stars, a biologist studies cells, and a neuroscientist studies brains. And let's be honest, they rarely share the same explanatory language. But Cantelou takes a systems theory approach here. He argues that keeping these disciplines isolated deeply obscures a hidden organizational pattern that connects them all. If we don't bridge this gap, we're missing the unified, escalating continuum of persistence that literally defines our universe.
Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Let's move to Section 2, the architecture of persistence.
Through what Cantelou calls constraint resonance emergence theory, or CRET for short, we see this really fascinating four-step process. First, lower-level microscopic interactions build mesoscopic or middle-scale structures. Then those mid-level structures generate macroscopic constraints, which loop right back down to regulate and stabilize the whole system into a stable regime. So it's not just building from the bottom up, it's a continuous self-reinforcing cycle of upward building and downward regulation. It creates order out of chaos.
Now, the absolutely crucial point here is the difference between mere existence and true viability. Think about a pile of sand. It merely exists. It's passive, and a strong wind is going to scatter it. But a viable system actively works to maintain itself against constant disruption. It dynamically maintains its own organizational conditions. It's a lot like a tightrope walker constantly adjusting their balance to stay on the wire. Persistence isn't just about what a system is made of. It's about how the relationships within that system actively fight to survive.
And this perfectly illustrates how physical structure isn't just, well, dead matter. It's actually a cascading sequence of progressively stabilized regimes. We start all the way down at the fundamental quantum substrate, which lays the groundwork for space-time and matter to emerge. Then that matter bonds into physical structures, which finally organize into entire cosmic networks like galaxies and solar systems. Every single monumental level provides the stable, persistent foundation required for the next, more complex level to emerge.
But the universe doesn't stop at physical structures. That brings us to Section 3, the spark of autonomy.
We really have to contrast passive persistence with active persistence here. Think about a rock or a crystal. It physically stabilizes and persists, for sure, but it's entirely passive. Now look at chemical autonomy. This is where a living cell achieves organizational closure. The chemical processes inside the cell actually build the boundary, the cell wall, that protects those very same chemical processes. It's like a city building the walls that keep the city safe. It actively maintains its own survival. This is the monumental leap from chemistry to biology.
And that incredible leap from passive chemistry to active, autonomous biology sets the stage for Section 4, the rise of the actor.
So as multicellular organisms evolve, they need a lot more than just a simple cellular boundary, right? They actually need to navigate their environment. To pull this off, they develop recursive cognitive loops. A simple perception leads to an action, which generates environmental feedback, which then forces internal reorganization. The organism is constantly predicting, acting, and reacting. It creates this closed, continuous loop of the mind that makes it an active actor out there in the world.
In this highly organized regime, we literally have to rethink our basic cognitive functions. Things like memory, learning, and what we find salient
They aren't just passive filing cabinets or inert data storage sitting around in our brains. No way. They are highly refined, active tools constructed to enhance adaptive survival. They're constantly updating, specifically designed to keep our biological organization perfectly intact through the passage of time and rapidly changing environments.
Okay, so we have an organism that acts and survives perfectly. But this brings us to a massive twist in our explainer. Section 5, the phenomenological observer.
I want you to just pause and notice your own stream of consciousness right now. Cognitive loops perfectly explain our survival actions, what we do to stay alive. But why do we actually feel the experience of being alive? Why is there a subjective what it is like to see the bright color red or to feel deep joy? I mean, an advanced robot could act and survive perfectly without feeling a single thing. So what's going on here?
To solve this puzzle, Cantelo actually separates our consciousness into two totally distinct regimes. First is the actor organization, which we just talked about. It navigates the world, predicts threats, and keeps us alive. But the second is the observer organization, and its sole characteristic is pure experiential presence and continuity. It's the part of you that simply witnesses the experience of existing, completely separate from your survival instincts or your need to react to the world around you.
The observer operates in what Cantelo calls the fundamental mode, and it's anchored by these very specific invariants, experiential presence, and the continuity of your identity, space, and time. These core anchors persist even when all our other thoughts, memories, or sensory inputs are just wildly changing. Think about it. If you close your eyes in a quiet room, you still feel like you occupying a specific point in space and time. They are the absolute bare minimum requirements for a continuous stream of subjective experience.
Which leads us perfectly into our final section, where we unlock the ultimate equation. Section 6, the equation of consciousness.
First up, we take all those survival invariants of the actor. We're talking about things like a sense of agency, feeling embodied, environmental interaction, goal-directed behavior, and adaptive prediction. And these aren't just abstract concepts. These are deeply ingrained biological tools. They evolved specifically through millions of years of natural selection, just to keep us alive, moving, and functioning successfully through our physical environment.
And here is the absolute game changer, this profound, almost mathematical revelation. Observer organization plus actor organization equals our ordinary, everyday waking consciousness. Your daily experience of life isn't just one monolithic thing. It's this beautifully complex composite regime. It is the pure, witnessing presence of the observer, perfectly integrated with the goal-directed, survival-driven loops of the actor. Together, they create the reality you're experiencing right this exact second.
And this brilliantly explains why altered states of consciousness happen. In our normal day-to-day consciousness, both systems are fully integrated. But in altered states, like deep meditation, near-death experiences, or intense flow states, the actor's survival drive, that constant need to predict and control, temporarily falls away or diminishes. Yet the observer's pure continuity remains entirely untouched. You still vividly experience reality, but without the filter of the survival-driven ego.
To wrap things up, Cantelo makes this incredibly powerful point. The thread linking physical structure, life, mind, and consciousness may not be matter, energy, or information alone. It may be the progressive organization of persistence itself. The single thread tying everything from dead matter forming swirling galaxies all the way to your subjective feeling mind right now isn't some magical, undiscovered substance. It's simply organization.
Which leaves us with one final, totally awe-inspiring question to take away. Why does reality exhibit a fundamental tendency toward increasingly persistent forms of organization? Why does the universe so desperately want to persist, to survive, and ultimately to experience itself? That is a mystery that's going to keep us thinking for a very long time. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep questioning the nature of everything around you.